Hi, good evening. My name is Tim Johnson, and I call this regular meeting of the Measure X Citizen Oversight Committee to order. We are conducting this meeting in person, and it is being recorded. The agenda for this meeting is on the city's website at www.santa-ana.org. Members of the public will have the opportunity to address the Measure X Citizen Oversight Committee regarding agenda and non-agenda items during the public comment section of the meeting. And please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance wherever you are. Ready to begin?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, if we could call the roll, that would be great.
Member Lewis? Present. Member Lugo?
Present.
Member Rodriguez is excused. Chair Johnson?
Present.
We have a quorum.
All right, excellent. Thank you. And this be the time for the public to comment on agenda and non-agenda items. Since I don't see anyone here, is there anyone online?
There is not.
All righty. Our next item on is the consent calendar, which consists of the approval of the minutes from our January 15th special meeting. If I could get a motion to approve, or if there's any edits to the minutes.
I motion to approve.
Second.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, let's go ahead and call the vote.
Member Chu?
Aye.
Member Lewis? Aye. Member Lugo?
Aye.
Chair Johnson?
Yes, for me.
Motion passes.
Excellent. And I'm going to give it over to our acting city treasurer. I think is that your official title, or finance director? Okay.
Yeah.
Finance director, Alex Trinidad, for our second item, which is our revenue update.
All right. Good evening, Chair and committee members. Yeah, I'll control it. So good evening. So this is your update. I think this is your second update on sales tax for the current fiscal year, 2025-26. Works good. So the revenue collected so far is 42,241,000. So this represents 6 months of collections of receipts. So we're halfway there. As you can see on the table, the months for reporting period, September, December, those are true-up payments. And that's when CDTFA, they advance the city the first 2 months, and then they give us a true-up. So that's why you see a spike in the month of September and December. Okay, so far, as you can see on the chart here, the city has collected less from the same period from last year. So last year, meaning fiscal year 23-24, we've collected $93,000 less from last year. So pretty much less than 1%, but basically showing that revenues are flat compared to last year. So this chart, it shows quarterly receipts for Measure X since inception. As you can see, while the overall trend indicates a gradual growth, actual receipts in the recent quarters have fallen below the trend line. This decline was addressed during the mid-year budget report, which included a reduction in estimated sales tax revenues. Specifically, the report adjusted Measure X revenues by $2,652,000. So that was a decrease in our estimates. So these adjustments reflect ongoing revenue challenges, and it aligns with our estimates with actual collections. So looking beyond the city of Santa Ana, we do see these similar economic challenges at the regional level. So Orange County's taxable sales declined by 2.3%. And this drop is also seen across Southern California. So this does suggest that the revenue challenges we're facing locally, it does reflect a broader shift in consumer and business spending. Some of the major sectors that's impacting this is the auto sales industry. So high interest rates have weakened new car sales. And so people are hesitating on those big ticket purchases. For the business and industry, while the business to business saw a slight growth, most categories are flat or declined due to economic pressures. The fuel and service stations, fuel payments dropped by 13%, and this is driven by lower consumption and falling fuel prices. And this trend is expected to continue through end of this fiscal year, 24-25. So next steps for the committee. So we are planning to meet with the sales tax consultant soon in this month to get updated information on sales tax. We do have a third quarter budget report scheduled for May 20th. And then our next Measure X meeting will be June 11, 2025. I did share with the committee our early direction staff report that was posted yesterday. And that's scheduled to be discussed during our March 18 council meeting. So once you develop your recommendations, that's going to be presented to the council next Tuesday. So that's quick update on revenues.
All right, excellent. We have any questions? Let's go down the line if we would.
Thank you. No questions for me.
Thank you. No questions for me.
I was going to ask, are we still using the same sales tax consultant as we did last year? I remember there was a change from one year to the next.
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, the last meeting that we did have our new sales tax consultant. They're from HDL. We've used Avenue Insight for a while now, but we did make that change recently. So they provide us not only with the sales tax forecasting, but also audits and for sales tax and for other services. So far, this is the first year that we work with them. Hopefully, sales tax is something that's difficult to forecast. There's a lot of economic challenges and things that change daily. That's why if we did it internally, I don't think we have the capacity, also the knowledge in the industry. So that's why we do rely on them. But even them having this additional information that we don't have, it's still challenging. Estimates have changed since we started. So yeah. Yep.
All right, excellent. I think I'm okay also. So we want to go into, I think, the item number 3, which is the expenditure update.
Do I have to? Showing. Okay. All right. Good evening, committee members again. So this is we provided the detailed expenditure report as part of the agenda item. So far, we reported expenditures through January 31st, 2025. Just a reminder for the committee and also for anybody listening from the public, the city's fiscal year starts in July, or this fiscal year started July 1st, 2024, and it's going to go through June 30th, 2025. So far, the city has spent $54,083,000. And just a reminder that, typically when the city receives a service or even purchase of items, it typically takes a month to pay these. So you are seeing a month lag there for bigger projects, like capital projects or purchases of big equipment. Typically there's a lead time of maybe a couple months to maybe sometimes a year, especially for capital projects where it may require some sort of design and also doing an RFP, a request for proposals from different contractors to actually do the work. And so that's why you might see a lag there. Yeah. So I don't know if the committee has any questions on specific items to report so far. Another reminder on the expenditure report, we report expenditures at the line item detail. So specifically for a specific purpose. But also some of the expenditures are reported in addition to what was previously provided from before Measure X was in place. So for example, for graffiti, I don't remember the exact amount, but let's say we used to spend $500,000 in graffiti abatement. Because of Measure X, it's funded additional funding for that. So we report the difference that Measure X has helped pay for that. So there are some line items in the expenditure report that's providing that additional service to the community. So
Let's go ahead and make comments or questions.
Just a question to clarify. So we have what, like 5 months left in the fiscal year, something like that, and we've spent 54 million so far.
yes.
Okay, of the budget of 85 million. Okay, all right. All right, thank you.
No questions for me. Thank you for the report.
Thank you.
I do have a question. The recurring costs identified fiscal year 24-25, is that addition, I'm trying to figure out what the relation between the recurring costs, the column to the left.
Right.
And then the recurring costs identified in 24-25, are those increases from the year before?
Yeah, so during the 24-25 budget, those were items that were added as recurring from previously identified items. The bulk of it was one-time in nature, and that's what's really been added to Measure X, but there were some items that were added for recurring. I don't remember on top of my head, but for fixing the streets, for example, 100,000, I do recall that we added additional funding for pothole replacement. That used to be we added a one-time funding the year before that, but that's a recurring allocation. I think other things that were added is additional funding for the zoo for like supplies and things like that. Yep.
So the one-time costs column, like would we be able to stop that spending altogether relatively easily, or is it a major impact or like even though it's one-time spending, is it like the city would need to know like 2 years ahead of time before they really pulled that trigger, or like how one-time is it really?
Right. That's a good question. So for the one-time, it is easier to stop that. For example, it's specific for a purpose, right? So, I think one of the things that we funded, the big one for fixing the streets, I think that was for certain traffic signals. And so that was funded for that purpose. Once that project is complete, that's it. That's really it. But for the recurring component, it's a little bit more difficult, right? Because, we have contracts, maybe it would involve staffing, right? So it's a little bit more difficult, but for the one time, it is a little bit easier. One of the biggest items on that list is under unrestricted general revenue purpose for 8.8 million. I know you recall that we've been funding our 115 trust, and that's the intent for that is to mitigate fluctuations in pension costs. And we do consider that one time, even though it's been there a couple of years. It's year by year basis. Certain for the last couple of years we've been able to fund that, but it doesn't mean that we have to continually funding that future years if the capacity or budget doesn't allow for that, or there's not enough resources to pay for that.
Is there an end to that, or is it expected to be a continual obligation
For
the pension, the large portion that's in that 8.8 million?
For pension, it is an ongoing thing. In theory, if all the employees that were here at the city were to, if we didn't hire anybody else, right? In theory, we would be able to pay off that unfunded liability and that pension liability that we have. Unfortunately, well, every year the city hires new staff, right? So it's an ongoing thing where the city pays their normal contribution. When CalPERS, they invest this money that the city puts in there as well as the employee. When they don't meet those investment targets, it typically creates that unfunded liability. So the last couple of years, they have not met that. Last year, they were off by 1%. So a couple of years before that, they missed it completely. So it varies year by year. Yeah.
Okay, and then obviously you're in the heat of budget season, getting ready for that. When you do the schedule, in anticipation of the upcoming budget, is your starting point, so your far left column, the recurring costs, is that taking recurring we'll call it column B plus column C? Is that your starting point for the next fiscal year, or is it essentially your total spending plan? Like what is your starting point?
Like your starting base?
Yeah.
Yeah. It really depends on what it is. For example, for personnel costing, right? At some point it was, let's assume this year, right? It's in the budget. Next year's budget, it's going to include additional costs such as, every employee, if they're not at their top step, they might get an increase, right? If they do well, right? It also might include additional adjustments. Let's say the bargaining group agreed on a 3% increase for the next couple of years. That might be incorporated in there. For contracts, for example, there might be contracts in there that are considered recurring. When they were first awarded, call it they were $100,000 a year, right? But part of that contract includes increases, 3%, maybe next year, maybe 4%, whatever was agreed on. So those costs will increase. So our budget staff is really busy now. And one of the things that we do is we consider that, call it a baseline budget, right? What's in there, we really vet information that is being proposed. We're making sure that those increases are part of an agreement, that they're in there. Anything new, like really new items, those needs to go through our budget process, which is vetting those requests through our process and city manager, and also aligning those new requests with city council priorities, the residents, and also the Measure X committee. So,
But for the most part, you are correct. It's B plus C, and then adjusted for some of those contractual obligation factors.
yeah.
Okay, so that's how you control for the one-time type stuff. You're not including the one-time in as your starting point for.
Yeah, those
Okay.
drop off. And and our budget, we have a budget system, budget module, call it that. When things are entered, either you flag them as a recurring or you flag them as a one-time. One-time, they drop off. Yep.
All right, excellent. I think that is all my questions. Does anyone have any follow-ups? Seeing none. So now we are going on to our item number 4, which is the one of our responsibilities is to prepare an annual report that Alex had kind of hinted at that will be in the city council agenda for this coming Tuesday. And so right now, I believe that he sent out kind of a placeholder, and it's where we historically we have had where's my little sheet here. Last year we had a 7. We had 7. Thank you.
Yeah, we have it all.
These 7 items that were in our report. And so this is what we can do whatever we want with this in terms of that. I have some ideas, but we can do. This is essentially our communication to the council that gets put into a bigger presentation from finance.
Quick question. Have any of the committee members been able to take a peek at the early direction report to council for March 18th? Okay. Alex, you may want to give them just like a little quick overview of it. Yeah, just a quickie. I mean, I guess I can make it really quick, bottom line it.
If the other members have seen it already, don't do it for my.
Please do it for all of us.
Yeah, right on.
I skimmed it. I'll be honest. I skimmed it.
Okay. So for a while now, we've been predicting that, starting with this next fiscal year, 25-26, that we would start to run into a little bit of a budget deficit, if you will, a structural budget deficit, because we knew that our spending was outpacing our revenues. And that's what we're seeing. Early in this budget process, it looks like we could be, 4 million plus upside down. And so we may actually be looking at doing a few cuts here and there to rebalance. We're looking at some options to generate some revenue for the future. There's quite a few things that we're looking at to build this budget, but needless to say, compliant with our city council adopted policy, the city manager will be recommending a balanced budget to the city council. So however that needs to be done is how it will be put together and proposed to city council in May. But I just wanted to give you that heads up that we are definitely looking at a deficit scenario this next year. Unless our our early revenue estimates are very wrong and we're surprised and we have a lot more than what we think we're going to have. Unless that happens, it's likely to be some cuts to balance the budget. So that's the big kahuna. What did you want to add to that?
Yeah, so like Kat mentioned, unless our revenues come in higher than we expect, then that would make a difference. For specifically for sales tax, it's expected to grow 2%, 2.1% next year. So it's relatively flat. There is an increase, but not significant. The major source of revenue for the city is sales tax and property tax. And so with inflation, I think our cost is definitely going to be higher than that 2%. One of the things on the staff report that we included is we have one-time monies from the general fund of 16 million. That's in there. And a lot of the recommendations or proposals in the staff report is to maybe consider using some of that one-time monies for one-time uses, right? Like I mentioned, some of them are to generate revenue for the city, and other ones are just needs that the city needs, right? So not a lot of recurring ask, I would say, but more maybe rebalancing some of our uses that we use that funding for. So the focus is, really, or even setting aside additional funding for the future, right? For like the 115 trust. So I think it's important for you guys to know that there is that 16 million available for one time, and when you guys do your recommendation.
And just as a reminder to the committee, the 16 million of one-time money comes from, it's the excess general fund balance above and beyond what our policy reserve level is. And that comes about each year when our revenues do a little bit better than what we expected, and we spend a little bit less than our full appropriations. So when we closed the year for 23-24, we had more money than what we predicted that we would have because we didn't spend 100% of the appropriations, and our revenues did a little bit better than our conservative projections. And so that's how this one-time money comes about. But I know that the city manager is very interested in making using at least a small portion of that 16 million to make some investments that might actually generate more revenue for the city in the long run. I know that there may also be some interest in just leaving some of that 16 million be and let it sit in the general fund balance in case we need it next year. There's some interest in maybe moving a little bit more of it into the Section 115 trust, as Alex said, for future pension costs. So there's multiple ideas on the table, but that's why he's focusing on that 16 million, because we may actually be able to help ourselves out for the future.
I think that's helpful. The one thing that I wasn't, you're saying that you're probably gonna be some cuts and stuff in the early direction report. It feels like, and again, it was a skim document for me today, but it feels like there's a lot of, hey, we need direction on if you want to utilize this, go forward with this project or that project.
The early direction report is more about taking the city council's temperature. They're gauging their interest in different things. So once we gauge their interest on a variety of topics, then it helps us determine, if we do make some cuts, where should we stay away from? Because those are things that city council is interested in. Or, what should we go after? Because they might actually give us some direction during March 18th meeting to say, you know what, in addition to the staff report, there is an attachment with all of the Measure X spending items that have been approved since Measure X passed. And so it's possible that a city council member could go, oh, I had a look at that Measure X list, and you know what? I think that I would have no problem if we cut that thing and that thing. We might get some of that direction on March 18th. Don't know.
All right, excellent. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question. So, I always think that we would help each other out if we communicated better as holistically as a city, right? What are, can you share, has the city manager given any indications on what her idea or the city manager's ideas are for producing revenue?
Yeah, the producing the revenue side is in the staff report. So there, one is to make an investment in the stadium and start having more events in the stadium to generate revenue off of that.
Mhm.
Another is to invest a little bit of money into SARTech to spruce, Santa Ana Regional Transit Center, to spruce it up a little bit and maybe get some more lease income in there. We've got a lot of empty space over at that facility. And so it'd be nice if we could actually bring in some lease revenue on that one. What are some of the other ones?
So the other one is there is a lot that is not being fully used. I think it's
Oh, yeah.
close to
the
modern day.
parking lot. Mhm.
Maybe repurposing that, investing money for, like, example, painting, fencing, and things like that, and maybe using it as a venue to be able to rent it out. The other thing is maybe investing some money in the jail facilities. There is a program, it's called Pay to Stay program
Mhm.
for some of the inmates. That's a potential way to generate revenue for the city. So there is actually, and then there's also the senior center here close to downtown Santa Ana, where, in Santa Ana, there is a need for meeting spaces, like, for example, conferences, things like that. And it's close to a parking lot. So maybe potentially either expanding that, or two, investing some funds in there to make it, maybe be able to rent it out over the weekends, right? For quinceañeras and things like that. So those are some of the recommendations. It's one-time money, right? You invest it, but then you get a long-term return for the city.
Yeah, or even during the week for business meetings.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
In the pay to stay program for jail, apparently there's a program where you can choose to stay at a nicer jail than maybe
Where you would
yeah,
be.
exactly. So
I just learned that. So.
there are some people who choose to do that, and that can be a
Never heard of
revenue
such a
source
thing.
for
And
it.
then you could actually leave to work and still do your time. So
And-
there is programs like that.
Yeah, and the parking lot that we're talking about potentially generating revenue is the place where off of Bristol, where it's Friday Night Munchies. Some of you maybe yep. Yeah, so currently right now, that organizer for that event is only paying $51 per Friday. And so we kind of need to put in some structure there so that maybe we can get some more revenue off of that thing.
What was the idea of turning that into a event space?
Yeah, somewhere where we can close off. And so then you would, like the Friday Night Munchies or other events like that, or lowrider events, classic car events, those kinds of things, to actually where they're organized and they pay a fee to
Right.
hold the lot for that day and have whatever event they want to have.
So it's $51 for the entire event, or like
Yes.
each of the food trucks pays
No,
$51?
$51 for the entire event. That doesn't even cover our costs to pick up the
And then
trash.
so I'm assuming the organizer charges the trucks a fee on their own, right?
Where they definitely generate
Okay.
revenue
Mhm.
and more than what they're getting charged. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Yeah. And then for the stadium, going back to that one, currently our stadium holds, I think, 9,000, it has 9,000 seats. So the idea is maybe investing to add 2,000 more, right? So now it has a capacity of 11,000. Potentially that might be able to qualify you to bring in different type of venues, like soccer matches, wrestling, things like that. So that's kind of the idea for that one.
CIF finals.
Yeah,
those
it's like
kinds of things.
college. Yeah.
It's like if you get yourself up above the 10,000 seat level, all of a sudden it opens you up to being able to bring in a lot more different types of events.
I've heard about that. Was there any additional ideas in regards to the leverage Measure X money for grant opportunities that you guys know of from the city council?
So
Not necessarily.
I don't know any specifics, but specifically for Measure X, but a lot of the grant funding is they do require matching, right? And so I know we've done that, but specifically for Measure X, so it might have been overall general fund, but not recently.
Mm-mm.
No.
Well, I love the idea of being able to support some ideas that are already out there by the city manager in the case. And exploring whatever it takes to be able to increase the stadium, because I've heard the same thing, like once you hit a certain like capacity amount, you start inviting bigger venues and a lot more, dollars that come in, sales dollars that come in. I also love the idea of the lot by Modern Aid, changing and being very critical about that permitting and allowing events that are going to be a little bit more, not just revenue generating by people who go there and buy from the trucks, but the permitting process and, the event, the security and being able to pick up the trash is, I think, the very minimum, right? Like, if we're going to go clean it, I think we should charge enough to at least cover that cost. That bill.
Yeah.
That and
Maintain it.
I mean, maybe not necessarily make money, but at the very least,
Yeah.
stay equal.
Yeah.
And then pay to stay jail. I was joking earlier when I said I didn't know anything about it. I know a lot about it because I have had friends and family that have had to go through that type of program.
Mhm.
And as a matter of fact, all of them go to Seal Beach because it happens to be one of the best places where you could pay to stay jail.
Wow.
If they're, and I know that they pay a pretty penny for it. It is not inexpensive at all.
Do you mind sharing or? Because in the staff report, we included information about that program. I know a little bit more just because I did talk to our police department about that. So we do have capacity for 20 of those type of inmates, and they do pay $134 daily rate. And so if it's fully staffed, staffed, then yeah, but it's a program that could offset some of our costs at the jail, definitely.
I think that it's a good idea. If
Yeah.
you could, whatever it takes to be able to make it a little bit more appealing. Not only does it help with revenue, but more importantly, revenue for the jail. So it could be a little bit more, not necessarily comfortable, but better.
Sorry, I have some basic questions because this is new information to me. I did not know this was a program that existed, pay to stay. So you can pay to stay in a nicer jail?
So the way I understand it, I don't, although I know some people, I don't know the intricacies of it, but the way I understand it is that there are situations where people are incarcerated, but they are allowed to go to work.
Okay.
Yep.
So they allow them to go to work, but they have to check in and check out and stay overnight at the facility. So you're basically paying for a very nice hotel room that isn't a nice hotel room.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and it seems to allow, I guess the courts and the judges are allowing that type of stuff to happen. And it's
Okay.
been around for a while. I think I've heard about this.
So they set up like hotel rooms, basically these pay to stay rooms. I'm now very curious.
I have no
What they look
idea what
like.
accommodations
So,
look like. but
Normal
I've seen-
jail cells.
Yeah.
I will comment because I actually saw them when I did a PD tour of the
Okay.
jails, and so it's not a hotel, but it is it's just a facility, and they're not individual, if I remember correctly, but it's not a hotel.
But they're nicer than the typical jail setup.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I mean, that's interesting as far as generating revenue for the city. I mean, like you said, the jail currently could potentially house 20 of those, I don't know what to call them, units, cells, rooms. And if they're at full capacity and people are paying $134 per night, that's a good source of revenue, I think.
A question I had on the another question I had inside here is the 28 Civic Center, which I think, if I remember, I think it's like would be right behind here, like kind of kitty
Yes.
corner.
Yep.
Probably maybe an 8-story building or so. Is that
It's
Yes.
right around in there, 8 or
Okay.
9 stories. Yeah. Mhm.
kind of like where we probably park?
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yep, that's the building.
And so the city owns that, and the
Yeah.
plan is, it sounds like it's met the end of its useful life, and it's time to
The
demo it and.
The
find
building is
purpose
in
for it.
such a condition that it would actually cost more to bring it up to standards and make it safe and usable than it would be to demolish it and start over. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, and so this is obviously gonna be a use of funds for us.
Mhm.
It sounds like there's some matching funds available that have a relatively short
Mhm. We have to make a
trigger on
decision
it, like,
quickly.
like end of this year type of stuff, which.
Yeah.
You know, these types of things are, difficult to make on quick,
Mhm.
timeframe, so, what is the, I'm sure it's in here, so I'm gonna apologize. What is the ask for the city that the city is gonna, what's their share? That they have to kind of commit, they'll get the matching funds? Or
Well,
the,
well, we already
funds
got
or-
those monies from the state. So we have the 4.3.
It's $4.3 million
Yeah.
from the state.
So we have it in our pockets, ready to go, but it must be used by December 2025. If we don't use it by then we'd have to give it back to the state and then we would have nothing for demolition. The problem is demolition costs a lot more than the 4.3 that we have. And so we either need to figure out how to come up with the rest of the money so that we can do the demolition by December of 25. Or we need to decide to do something else, like maybe just start demolishing the inside of it
Mhm.
and leave a shell behind until we can find some more money to continue on with the demolition. Or maybe, you know, there's multiple options. So it's not necessarily a matching fund situation. We just need more money than what we have set aside for it.
And is that in the range of the 14, is that the?
Mhm, that's the 14
million?
million. So it would be,
Just The
yeah.
14 million, I think it's just for the building itself.
Yeah.
If you include the plaza of the fountains, which is the area around that, which the city currently doesn't own, that's another 5 million. So I think the total is something like,
But if you do both,
close
if
to
you do them
6, yeah.
both together, is it only a delta of 400,000? Is that
That's
what?
right. Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
I know.
I
So
know,
it's, yeah, the whole project is like a $20 million project. But if we just did our building, not the county's plaza of the fountains, and we can talk about that in a minute. But if we just did our building, we're short 10 million bucks, bottom line.
And
And
so are we looking to the county to be able to do a cooperation agreement or something?
it's possible that I think that the county is desirous of demoing the Plaza of the Fountains.
For 400,000,
But-
their delta?
But no, that would cost them close to $6 million.
yeah.
I don't know that the county wants to invest $6 million to demo that plaza. So it's possible, just possible, that maybe the county might be willing to transfer it to us. Don't know. And, you know, maybe get rid of that $6 million liability by just pushing it to us. So,
So really, we're looking at about a 10 million and change. About a 10 million and change ask to be able to just demo. That's not any, that's
And-
not.
Just for the building.
that is correct, but we're not actually really asking for it because we don't think that's reasonable. We only have $16 million to play with. So we're just kind of seeing where's, you know, gauging the city council's interest, you know. I am absolutely certain that our elected officials and our city leadership will be seeking additional funds from the state. Because the state didn't give us nearly enough, because the idea was to transfer the building to us and have enough money for demo, and it's not near enough for demo. So maybe we can get an additional earmark from the state. I don't know. I wouldn't count on it from the feds right now, but from the state perhaps.
But it has to be I mean, we have to spend the 4 million before the end of the year.
Yeah, or we could try to get an extension too, especially if we're in talks with them to give us an additional earmark. I mean, like I said, I don't even know if that's feasible, but I know it's a road we've got to try to go down.
Yeah. I think my biggest concern was that, yeah, I mean, you're taking up, you know, 75% of the one time with one project that
Yeah.
is not, it's just
That is not our
tearing the project
recommendation.
down. It's not even building it back up.
That
right?
is not our recommendation.
Not,
Yeah.
it's not our recommendation, but we just want to get their input. And I'm with you. Like, I was surprised to see the price tag just to demolish a building. And
I was
just
just
to
gonna say
demolish, not to build it.
The reason that it's so expensive, if you just out of curiosity, if you've looked at the building, you might notice that it from a distance, when you're looking at it, it almost looks like it has these 4 corner pillars. Those pillars are actually 15 feet by 15 feet. Those are solid concrete that were put in place there as an earthquake retrofit to the building itself. So the building was built before modern earthquake standards. And so by building these pillars, think of it as almost like putting a splint on a leg break or something like that. So that's what they did. They put these and these pillars, these 15-foot by 15-foot diameter pillars, that's just driving the cost up quite a bit. Yeah.
Are we using the building at all right now?
No, it's empty
It's
right now.
totally empty. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
Do you
we
want to
can't-
open an escape room in it? No, I'm just kidding.
Is it approved for occupancy though? Can it be used for something?
That I don't think they've red tagged it or anything, but I know that there were some leaseholders, people still working in offices as of like maybe a year ago or so, and I know that they've all left. So I don't think so. I think it's been rendered like not safe for, I mean, you can walk inside of it. Like I said, it's not red tagged. It's not like you need to, worry about like, oh, if I walk in this thing, is it coming down on top of me? But I don't think it's considered safe enough for like, daily use.
No, I understand. Typically with buildings that old, they have some sort of asbestos and the owners are not allowed to make any remodel without abatement, basically cleaning out the asbestos, and that costs more than what it's worth. So I think that's why the building is probably in limbo.
You've hit the nail right on the head.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sound like you have anyone that is in a current interior office that is willing to relocate their department over there to get a window office. So, but instead of an escape room, maybe a rage room, and that might help with the demolition of it a little bit.
I
But,
kind of threw the idea like maybe a movie studio is willing to come in and, use it and explode the building
Yeah.
for a scene or something like that.
Yeah, film post-apocalyptic scenes in there or something
Right.
like that. But from what I understand, the demo is also very expensive because for whatever reason, that building you cannot do the TNT like what you see in Vegas with the, that won't work. And so it's got to literally be dismantled, broken up, hauled away.
yeah, well, it's close to other buildings and you have,
Yeah.
there's I'm sure a lot of stuff going on. So, okay. Yeah. Okay. I think those are my main items on here. So again, our task is to come up with, edits of this, keep it, cross some stuff out, restart it all the way over. I have, in my opinion, I think we should try to, I mean, I've been on this committee since day one as my colleague here also. And I feel like, we can't, if the council doesn't know that this is kind of what we think, then they're not reading it, one, or what have you. But I think maybe from an emphasis perspective, from my point of view, we shorten it down to just the main hits, which to me is 1, 3, and 4 up there would be and I would maybe flip the order to go 4, 3, 1.
Yeah.
Is what my assuming that 1 is what I would want to emphasize. I would probably be, starting with 4, the point for planning, 3 set aside, and then 1 favor. If I were to throw something new in, it might be, I think, Alonzo, you brought it up, the communication of like, hey, what is this? Forget what page it is, but this page here that shows the delta between the projected revenues and projected expenditures, which the only thing we know that's accurate about this is it won't be accurate, right? It won't be exactly right, but the trend is going to probably be there. And so, communicate to the public, hey, this is where we're at. And this is what will happen. Right. But that would be my recommendation is shorten it down. I like 4, 3, 1. That is probably my most important items up there.
I second that, and I love the idea of emphasizing a communication plan to the public, because the public has to know
first of all, that there is this money that the city's collecting. It's important that they know how it's being used, especially every intricacy, especially the general fund. And the public is gonna have to make a choice sooner than later. I'm sure the city council is considering a contingency plan and possibly even trying to ask for the voters to extend it. So it's better that they know about it now and they're educated about it, but maybe, the populace before the city council introduces it.
And just for matter of public record, we have not received that direction from city council.
I'm happy to hear that, actually.
Let's go ahead and continue with thoughts.
So my thought is, I agree that we need to change the order and emphasize the most important point to provide a long-term plan for loss of Measure X revenue. I think that is something that, really we need to keep emphasizing to the council that we have to, there has to be a plan for that. And I think, again, shortening down to just a few bullet points is better, because I think the other, you might lose something in providing too many bullet points. And I also agree with the fact that the public really needs to know about the decrease in revenue and sort of what the future holds. So those are my thoughts.
I agree with everyone else on the committee. I will say number 3, favor one-time spending for Measure X revenue. Personally, what I would like to see is we elaborate, or at least I would like to elaborate that, because I favor one-time spending on projects that could generate revenue for the city. And I guess I would add that qualifier personally for me, because as everyone here on this commission has pointed out, there's going to be a shortfall and we need to figure out how to close that gap as best as possible. As far as communicating with the public about, Measure X, I will say, was it a few weeks ago? I was on a history walk. It was for Black History Month, and I was over by the Jerome Community Center, and there's a project going on there. I don't know what they're doing exactly, but I do remember seeing a sign that said, "Brought to you by Measure X." It was a big old sign on the fence. I took a picture of it and I was like, yes, that's exactly what people should be saying. Because again, I don't think a lot of people in this city understand that some of these projects are being paid for by Measure X dollars. And when we lose those dollars, what happens?
And I'm sorry, Member Chu, what was the thing that you were considering proposing to add to it?
Oh, just on number 3.
Okay.
Favor one-time spending from Measure X. Favor one-time spending on projects that would generate revenue for the city specifically, whether it's upgrading the stadium,
Okay.
upgrading the parking lot,
Thank you.
by modern day, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we could add at the end of that.
Gosh darn. I feel like I keep pushing it.
I just saw it.
At the end there, spending for Measure X for revenue generating projects, we could probably get rid of the Measure X revenue, just from Measure X.
Favor one-time spending on revenue generating projects, or favor one-time spending for Measure X for revenue generating project. Okay.
No. Yeah, I appreciate that change, because I was struggling with with that, because I was almost like, well, no, I don't want to, even if it's one time, I don't think it's necessarily great. Right. So I like that qualifier.
Because I think it dovetails into the other bullet points, right? As far as like establishing a long-term plan to prepare for loss of Measure X dollars, So I think it all kind of works together, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, just in general, I mean, I'm sure we're all aware of like the Santa Ana Unified and, kind of some of the budget struggles they're going. I feel like that's a kind of the precursor to what, our city will be facing when there's, when and everyone's going to be up in arms about, oh my gosh, we didn't see this coming. And it's like, no, we knew this was coming. We knew that this was coming. And spending in a city is a lot of, it's people, right? I mean, I mean, when we're talking about cuts and stuff, that's people. And so, that type of, I think that this planning is critical for the city to be able to do.
I had a question, but I don't want to cut you off. In terms of the early direction report that we kind of like went through, is it our place as this commission to, I don't know, highlight certain projects that we think the city should emphasize? Or, I mean, I don't know.
As a committee, you can choose to make whatever recommendations you would like to city council regarding Measure X or the general fund budget or whatnot, because the committee is an advisory board to the council. So if you have specific recommendations you would like to add, the committee is welcome to develop those.
I'm curious what the committee's thoughts are as far as, like, in my opinion, providing concrete recommendations about what the city could focus on.
So like, would an example of that be, like the stadium is one that we like
Yeah.
endorsed by Measure X? I mean, I'm not saying endorsed, but like, hey,
Yeah.
this hits
Right.
criteria 3 or
Right.
whatever. I think it's 3, and that type of a
Something, because that's the way
Right.
I operate. I like concrete,
Yeah.
actionable items. So, for example, I think it'd be ridiculous to spend 14 million on demolishing a building, right? When we have 16 million to play with. But maybe we could, encourage city council to maybe spend $250,000 on upgrading that parking lot by modern day, so that we can start charging folks more than $51 every time they use that lot. It doesn't even cover the trash pickup, the cost for picking up trash. So that's what I was thinking, but I'm curious, what other committee members think.
I would be open to do that. I don't know if I fully understand enough of all of the items in there to be able to say, kind of fully vet through it. I would be my concern of saying, I mean, yeah, I think, hey, if we can expand the stadium, I think that's a good thing. But again, from a finance perspective, I'm also looking at and going, okay, well, is it gonna cost 5 million, or is that gonna cost 100 million, or what, 500,000?
Yeah,
I don't know.
You don't have the ROI
Yeah, and
analysis.
how much money is it gonna bring in?
Exactly,
So
exactly.
that would be my concern. Hopefully, it's probably going to be a little bit of the council's concern also, I would suspect, but I mean, they probably have a little bit better idea.
Well, this is part of taking the temperature. That's why we call it early direction. So if council starts to bite on a couple of things, then we'll go back to the drawing board and vet out those analyses and determine what those ROIs might be.
Yeah, on the stadium, just to add a little bit more, on the staff report, you're right, it's around the ballpark of 5 million, an investment to add 2,000 seats and a beer garden refreshment area. But in addition to that, I think the fees would need to be revised and revisited to make sure that investment, we do get a better return and recover that cost.
Yeah, because it doesn't make sense to invest 5 million if we're only going to make 100,000 a year. That would take us 50 years to recover.
Yeah.
I've got a question. Is there anybody within the city that is focused on revenue generation for the city?
Specifically, not necessarily. You might say that economic development is to a degree, but not, I don't think in the way that you're thinking of. So economic development, they'll do things like facilitate getting certain businesses to move into town for the increase of the sales tax base. They'll work with businesses and there's a Santa Ana tourism marketing group. And so they'll work with them to, kind of market all the wonderful things you can see in Santa Ana if you come here. So I don't think quite like what you're thinking of, but that's what we have is economic development.
Well, let me expand. If the city does say, hey, we're unanimously, we'd like to give direction to the city manager to help us explore costs and ROI for some projects, whether it be the stadium or the modern day park lot, whatever it may be. does the city manager require that in order for the city manager to invest the time and resources to get that dollar amount of what it costs to invest and in turn provide a return on investment to the city?
Typically, I mean, and this goes with anything in the city, any kind of direction from the city council. You usually want your city council to kind of let you know that that's the direction that they're going before you invest a lot of staff time in something. And it could be anything. It doesn't have to be revenue generating projects. It could be anything.
No, that's what I thought. So-
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in all honesty, I mean, and maybe I'm extrapolating this a little bit too tight, but if there was somebody, a department or a person that was dedicated to looking at this, working with the city manager, working with the city council, working with the finance department that could look into revenue opportunities and start exploring and really investing their time, finding out what kind of costs there may be, you know, getting bids, working up the estimates, working on ROI, maybe that would be a good investment of Measure X dollars to have a resource to do that.
We actually have that capacity in-house to be able to do those kinds of things. So we have a lot of CPAs on staff. We have some very talented analysts on staff. And then between, you know, public works input, our analysts doing their thing with the research and the calculations and everything, we have the bandwidth to be able to do that.
Oh, that's good. That's good to hear.
Well,
Yeah.
but I
So,
think,
A dedicated person, no.
yeah,
But-
it's referring to is like, unless you're dedicated to, my job is to generate revenue for the city
Right.
and
Right.
like to find projects and be able to, you know, bring in, you know, the outside folks to be able to, you know, unless you actually are that person, when it's like 10 different people doing 10% of their job as revenue, then it's
Almost what's probably harder for an individual to do is to engage internal stakeholders.
Yeah.
Like the accounting, public works, you know,
Yeah.
so somebody that has been given that role and authority to be able to drive that policy, for lack of better words.
Yeah, I may be working on commission.
Well, I love the idea of having an internal, somebody that has a vested interest in the city.
Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
that idea,
Mhm.
you know. I only think somebody that has vested interest in the city is going to be able to do a good job
Mhm.
instead of hiring somebody.
Mhm.
But the hardest part isn't necessarily going to a general contractor or a few of them and asking for a bid
Mhm.
and then being able to present it. The hardest part is actually bringing in the stakeholders internally
Mhm.
and getting them to buy off on what you're spending time on
Mhm.
and driving them to and holding them accountable to
Yeah.
what they're committing to the city. So
Yeah.
if there's a recommendation I would make to the city council is to appoint somebody within the city to drive that.
So getting back to our, it sounds like we kind of have maybe 3, and then we added the 4 with the communication plan. My only other my edit on the first one there, which was our prior 4, was instead of saying establish a long-term plan, because that kind of makes it sound like, hey, this is a ways off. And it felt a ways off, you know, 4 years ago. Maybe delete the long term and just say, hey, we got to develop a plan. Instead of the long-term plan. Because that implies that we can wait until next year, maybe because it won't be long-term next year. We'll do it then.
That's a very valid point. If we really want to stoke a sense of urgency, we could also say, plan to prepare for the imminent loss of Measure X revenue. Just a thought.
I'm fine throwing imminent in there because it is imminent right now.
Yeah.
But imminent, N.
Give it a best
Yeah,
shot.
there you go. There you go. That's it. So the new language would be, we see in red there, which is also number 4.
I'm not married to that.
Yeah, I'm not married to 4
I
either,
like 1,
but
2, and 3. I think it is such a powerful statement because it just compounds the message. 1 into 2 into 3. 4 is nice, but it's not critical for me to keep it in the messaging.
I would say that if I'm in charge of doing number 1, part of that plan is going to be a communication. plan, so it might be duplicative. If we're trying to, dial it down to where, hey, let's just do three, just a few bold bullets, right? I think, I think if we got, I'm not married to having four in there, even though I think it would be part of a good plan, but I'm just one voice.
I agree.
Remember, Chewy, you're used to looking at red line stuff all day long, I'm sure. So,
Track changes.
I don't know if I'm the right person to ask because I make things overly wordy. So
On purpose.
you like to add words. Okay, there you
I
go.
like to add words. But I understand that having fewer bullet points is more digestible. I guess for me, I'm accustomed to adding more words to ensure that there is no ambiguity and that things are right. Exactly. Who said that? So, because for me, and I'm just one person, like you mentioned, I guess I like the idea of explicitly telling city council that we think it's important that they communicate to the public that we're going to lose out on a bunch of stuff once these Measure X dollars go away. So, but I understand that logically, if let's say you were tasked with taking care of item number one, preparing for the imminent loss of Measure X revenue, that you would, communicate with the public. I don't know that I like that, but I don't want to twist anyone's arm.
I was actually gonna go there to maybe put a qualifier or in additional wording there. So yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
It sticks to the mess.
I like it. It sticks to the messaging and it adds a little bit more color to, the message, the first bullet point.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. And again, I kind of keep going back to Santa Unified and like everyone is just up in arms over, everything. And, the first time they're hearing about it is at, a school board meeting. And I don't want our city to be in that spot. If something's going to happen, we need to know about it and be able to prepare for it.
I just have an anecdote to share. Today, actually, before I came to this meeting, I was at the gym and I was talking to two people that go to my gym and they live in Santa Ana and they were talking about how our sales tax here is higher than other cities in the county and they avoid big purchase items in Santa Ana for that very reason. But I explained to them that, those sales tax dollars, they help the city, so for me, that's why I think it's important to communicate to the public where this money is going.
Fun fact, there's 3 other cities in Orange County that are at our current rate now. And also the what was the other thing? Sorry, I'm getting old. Not only are they at this, usually we think of like the biggest sales tax purchases that we make is buying a car. And buying a car doesn't matter because the sales tax is attached to the home address of the car buyer. So if you're trying to skirt around getting a cheaper sales tax rate on a big purchase like a car, that's not going to help you. So
I actually found that out when I purchased my car. They said, "Is that really your sales tax rate?" Yeah, that is the sales tax rate.
I do want to echo what you said, Michael. I have been in a situation where I was buying a laptop and a monitor, kind of putting up a home office. And I purposely looked for a city with a lower tax because I knew I was going to save myself 1.52%. It was perfect. I mean, I saved myself a little bit of money, but with that kind of purchase, it was a few $100s. It was worth it.
and that's why they refer to it as a voluntary tax. They do. It's actually considered a voluntary tax.
Unless you're a business and then it's called a use tax and you're supposed to pay it. Actually, individuals are supposed to pay your use tax.
Okay,
too.
explain that to the public.
Yeah, exactly.
And me. Voluntary versus use. Voluntary tax is something you're just going anywhere and buying whatever you want. And those are the taxes that you get charged versus the use tax. for the city?
Meaning that it's voluntary and that you have an ability to be able to decide where you're gonna buy something. I think is probably
Or decide not to buy
or not
something.
or not decide, decide not to buy it at all.
Cat question, which other cities have the same sales tax rate that we do? I'm
Oh,
curious.
one
you
of
know.
them in City of Westminster. They're actually their tax, they had additional 1% add-on tax. That expired because I think their council took a while to decide. Eventually it was added back permanently, and then they came back and they actually added, and then now it's at the same level as ours. The other one is Seal Beach, and I think it's Los Alamitos.
But interesting to note that the Westminster is permanent, does not sunset, does not go away.
Was that voter approved or city?
Yes,
Yeah.
voter approved.
Wow.
And there are other cities that do have 1% additional. Most of them do. I think there's only a few that don't have additional sales tax, but the highest three definitely, we're not the only one at this point.
Other cities are gonna be catching up with us. It feels like the 1% is much more common.
Yeah.
So, and also the ability to have it as a general sales tax and not a specific one is paramount. I mean, I think there was one on this last ballot that was it, I think San Clemente had, it was a South Orange County to where it was very, it needed 2/3 and, it got like 60%, I think it was. And so the ability to have it as a general, which is what ours is also, even though a lot of people think it's specific for things, is also a key. All right, so are we good with this? Giving ability to make any grammar changes or punctuation changes after things get redlined out and reread?
I just have one suggestion. Item number 1, establish a establish a plan, sorry, to prepare for the future imminent loss. I would delete the word future, but I don't know what other folks think about that. So just say that it's imminent, like it's coming, it's here.
Yeah.
Better?
I prefer that wording, personally.
I second it, third it, I
Yeah.
approve.
Okay, so I think this is
I agree.
is this a vote item? Okay, so I would make a motion that we approve these 3 items to be included in the council report, allowing for edits and grammar changes as staff feels appropriate. And if we can get a second, that would be great.
I second.
All right. Any more changes or discussion? All right.
Member Chu,
Approve.
Member Lewis.
Approve.
Member Lugo,
Approve.
Chair Johnson,
Yes, for me also.
motion passes.
All right, excellent. And I think that was the end of our calendar. And I know that we have some new titles, so I want to officially congratulate former Executive Director Downs on her new position, as well as Alex on your new position also. But if you y'all want to make any comments, this will be your time.
Thank you for joining us today. We have a quorum, so thank you for providing us direction to be presented to the council. So I'll be the one presenting to them. So, smaller list, I think it's better because I think, like you said, if it's a long list, maybe things get lost and it's so much information. But 3, I think it's reasonable. So we'll be there for that meeting. But you're always welcome to attend or listen in. I think those meetings long, and sometimes they go long, but I think it's important because there's a lot of discussion. Understanding all their priorities and understanding helps us develop the budget. So, but that's it for me.
Yeah, and thank you for caring. It's obvious that each one of you do care, and we appreciate that. It makes it so much easier to work with you as a committee.
All right, great. Any final thoughts from, I do have one other thing, but go ahead.
As always, thank you for enlightening us and educating us and highlighting some of the issues that the city is going to face in the next few months. So thank you.
I second that. Thank you so much for the thorough explanation of the early direction report and everything that you bring to the committee so that we can make our recommendations. Really appreciate it and congratulations.
I can't thank you all enough, everybody that's at this table and in this meeting. I appreciate your time. It's fun to come here and have this conversation, and hopefully we make a little bit of a change for the positive.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for my co-members here for putting your time into this. It is super important. I would encourage all of us to, I think, if I remember right, I think I saw a budget budget survey that was put out. So
Yeah.
I would encourage us to look at that, have your families and friends give inputs what they think is important by finding that that survey. Alex, where can we find that? I'm assuming it's on the city's website.
Yeah, thank you. So the survey,
There we go. Okay, we're good.
yeah, so the survey is on the website, city website. If you Google City of Santa Ana budget, it's the first thing on the page. We are gonna print out postcards and have them available. So if you like some, we could always share that with you. But yeah, do share that on your social media. I think that's usually gets a lot of traffic on our end. But we want to capture as much feedback from the public and from the residents, because we do share that with the council members, and we align the requests that we're seeing from departments, from council, and also along with the residents, making sure all that aligns with what the community wants to see.
Great. Yeah. So I, we should be taking that also. We're residents of the city, and our opinion is important. Your others in your family are equally important, as well as I encourage my kids to try to do that and get involved with it also, because it's never too early for high schoolers and that type of stuff also. Yeah, the more information I feel like we can give our council members. We're a city of well over 300,000 people, and when only the loudest 10 voices are getting heard, that doesn't always mean that those are representative of everyone. So encourage everyone to do that. Having said all that way too long, I think we are adjourned until our next meeting in June. Thank you very much.